Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel session on industrial water. It's a pleasure to have great panelists with me today to discuss a very important topic. Some of them came with their fan club, and it's nice to see we actually have a full audience, even if we are right after lunch. So my name is Sophie Born. I'm with Schneider Electric, where I lead our global water and environment practice. And we are going to discuss here in the context of the North American water market, but indulge me, I may do a few parallel to what I see in other parts of the world. I'm going to actually ask each of you to introduce yourself, but with a specific angle on what's your relationship or angle when it comes to industrial water. And I'm probably going to sit.
Great.
So look.
Sure. Yeah. Nice to be here and meet everyone. My name's Luke Stevenson. I'm president of Enterprise Automation and vice president of the Tetra Tech Digital Systems Group. We're a master alliance partner with Schneider, systems integrator. So we really involved in helping consult and advise customers and then implement and support technology deployments around, Schneider products and software and hardware. So and when it comes to the markets we serve, I think that's our connection to, industrial water. We do a lot in municipal water, so you'll probably hear a little bit of that angle today. But in the end, the two are not that different. The technologies and the way that we approach water treatment and automation in that space tend to be very similar. And so a lot of the challenges and therefore the solutions are the same.
Thank you, Luke. Rebecca?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Rebecca Macco. I'm based in Seattle. I work for Brown & Caldwell. We're an engineering consulting company focused solely on water, wastewater, and environment. But I've been a consulting engineer in the industrial water space my whole career, 25 years plus. Worked in a lot of different industries over the years, but the last 5+ years been pretty much solely focused on the data center industry. So good to be here.
And Nick?
Yeah, Nick Valdez. I work for Vesco Water and a couple of their subsidiaries underneath that. So we're a conglomerate of about 38 or 39 different companies that service the water, wastewater industry. My specific role is to help our automation and controls pillar synergize together to make sure our customers have a one-stop shop or a one provider solution to water and wastewater demands. Happy to be here.
So thank you all to have joined me on stage to have this discussion around industrial water. And we are actually having this discussion in the context of a very high water stress overall. There are some projections by the World Economic Forum stating that by 2030, which is not so far away, the water demand is going to exceed the water supply by 30%. So that's a very huge gap coming at us very, very fast. And industries have actually a big role to play on how to mitigate this water stress. There are other topics. We could talk about how populations should decrease their use of, drink less water, eat less, but that's not an area where Schneider knows anything about eating less, or that's not the topic for today. Industries overall account for 20% of the fresh water use. So that's a significant part of the fresh water use, and that's what we are going to discuss. To introduce the discussion, I wanted to share some data points that we learned from a survey we commissioned in August, actually, in North America. And that survey was aimed at both water utilities and industry business leaders. Out of those 150 leaders that we surveyed, the majority of them believe that their systems are ready for future water demands. But the majority is my positive side talking, because if you look at it the other way around, 40% of the city leaders think their infrastructure is not ready, and 49% of the industry leaders think their plants or industrial infrastructure are not ready to meet future water demands, and that's the part on which we are going to focus. Another part of the survey was polling them on how they were rating the different risk to their systems, and water risk was the one that was rated the highest. So among industries, among water utilities, there is an agreement that water is a risk for their operation. On the other hand, when we ask them about their priorities, the priorities they have in their budget, where they have allocated resources and where they are going to take action, well, we ask them to rank 10 priorities, and water management is the one that was ranked last. So we have this dichotomy, if it's an English word, or this paradox, with water being seen as number one risk, and yet when it comes to taking action, investing, water management is the last of the priority. And I think we have, all of us here, a role to play on how to raise this call to action to do something about water management. So just the last slide before we move to the conversation, a few additional data points on the different aspects that could lead industrial to actually invest in water. So what they said was that they will invest if the water risk will generate system failure, or if they had to stop running their plant because there was not enough water, that would be a trigger to action. The second trigger to action will be savings, but that's probably more challenging because water is not very costly, right? And the last one is if there are legal or liability concern. So if regulations push them to do something about it, then they will be ready to move to action. So that's what we learn from this survey. And what I like to do is for you to give more color to that through what you are seeing on a day-to-day basis. So can you comment on why isn't action ranked higher when it comes to water management? Is that something you see? And maybe I'm going to start with you, Luke, with end user you engage with, industrial end user, for example?
Yeah, it's a good question. And like I said in my introduction, a lot of our experiences with municipal customers in addition to industrial customers. And it's really interesting to see the dichotomy, or you use the word paradox. You know, obviously for a municipal customer, it's the only thing that matters, right? Water management is their first and foremost priority, treating and providing safe drinkable water, or environmental control. And then when you get down to things like energy and chemical uses, those tend to be down the list a little bit. Flip that for industrial customers. When we talk to them or when we do projects, their number one concern is production, uptime. You know, they're in business to drive a profit. We get that. And then usually water treatment or water production is, just an input to the process. And so they need it to be reliable, but it is definitely not the focus or attention. I think to those two pieces that you showed, or to the statistics you showed, everybody would move if there was failure or downtime, and everybody, or maybe most people, would move if there were compliance problems. The problem is oftentimes when a failure occurs, it's too late. And I know everybody, for systems integrators like ourselves, they'll ring up and say, how quickly can I have it? I'd like it, tomorrow. But the reality is those solutions do take time to put together. So by not putting it higher up the list, I think we're running the risk of not being, threatening production, because the planning and the design and the implementation time while keeping production running isn't a simple activity. And so we need to be, elevate that as a priority so that we can act on it before it becomes a problem. But it's definitely something we see as being different, even though I think we can bring a lot of the same solutions to both groups.
Nick, you've been nodding to what Luke was saying. In your view, what are the biggest risks for industries not acting on water management?
So I think it's going to be, from our perspective, catching up to the curve. And as you said, solutions take a long time to put together. It take a long time to get budgeted and get approved and then actually get implemented into the system to where it can be a resource and manage the problem. I think if you sleep on that, you are more reactive instead of being proactive. And the market doesn't necessarily reward proactive behavior that we see. So our perspective is that we're taking a different approach with end users and industry to try to educate them that the reactive part of it is more costly and takes a lot longer to get a solution in front of them and in place.
So you both say this does take long to deploy new solution. Rebecca, you have a very specific positioning, because as a design firm, you start to engage with industrial customer very early in the process when they start thinking about the design. So how do you elevate the water management topic that early?
Yeah, we try to really dig in on the water risk question. I mean, it's just such a huge driver for adequate management. And you mentioned those three kind of major buckets of risk, and those are totally accurate. But I think it's about digging in on each one of those and getting real specific with clients about, this is how this could play out for you. This is the likelihood of this happening. This is what the impact's going to be at your business, what it's going to cost, so that they can really make informed decisions around those very real risks to their business and the financial impact that it holds, so they can kind of weigh those trade-offs. And I think the other really big driver is being a good neighbor. Just water stewardship can definitely spur companies to want to do more when it's related to their water stewardship commitments.
And what we do have a lot of industrial customers as well. And what strikes me is that a lot of them don't even know how much water they're using. I mean, they get the bill at the end of the month, but they don't have any real-time information. That will be, not having a baseline is not helping to know where to act. Is that, I'm going to turn back to you, Luke. Is that something you see as well? And is building that baseline a natural first step on how to then have improvement plans and optimize the system?
Yeah, I mean, when we get to have the conversation, we've kind of all highlighted how maybe sometimes it doesn't become the first conversation. But yeah, absolutely. When we get to talk about it as an element or an input to their process, something that they can de-risk, something that they can manage as well. I think the other comment to that, I'll say, where they maybe do, where it does come to the forefront of they do care about it, or maybe we've heard about a few of the projects, is when it's taking the attention of staff and the resources to maybe run the industrial water plant or the water treatment side of the business versus say like in, the core of what they're trying to do. So they only have certain resources, maybe you all are in this position to run or operate a facility. And when their time and attention isn't on the core operation, it's on this side process. That's also when they start to realize, hey, we're not getting to to our priorities. So I think understanding and baselining, I guess, what's the right amount of need and attention from a manpower or from a resource standpoint that is needed to keep this online and functioning becomes just one aspect that we see that I think it needs attention and needs to be understood, so they know, are we leveraging technology to the right extent? Are we over leveraging resources, beyond what we need to or should? That's my thought.
Rebecca, you do consult on water, but with a lot of different industries. Do you see differences between, food and bev, semiconductor, or data center, different industries you are interacting with?
Yeah, I would say there are quite a few differences. Many similarities too, but I think a lot of the differences come out of maturity of the markets. How long have they been around? Like, for example, oil and gas refineries. I mean, we haven't built a major one in the United States since the 70s. So all that infrastructure is really, really old. So they're dealing with some different challenges than, say, like the data center industry, where their biggest issues are the 5 nines and being able to have that kind of reliability. And so they build in a ton of redundancy. So they have different things that rise to the top in terms of how they need to manage things.
And what about you, Nick? You do sell to a lot of different industries as well.
Yeah.
What are the main commonalities and differences?
So I agree with Rebecca. The approach to the problem is different based on the different industries that you're interacting with. For data centers, we do see a lot more technology-driven requirements to make sure they have those redundancies. And then for the aging infrastructure and other parts of the municipal group, technology is not necessarily on the forefront of their thought process. And so that's something we have to educate them on, and how to help them understand, in order to sustain water and it's as a resource, we have to be able to take a better stride in implementing new technologies.
So some industries are more water intensive than others. And I was actually during the plenary this morning, if you remember, we saw some interesting curves of how much data center was using of the overall energy resources of given states. And in some states, data center were accounting for up to 15, even 20% of the energy bill somehow. They are the exact same one, but with water use. And the amount of water that data centers are using in some of the states are trending towards, I think in Virginia it's towards 93%, so it's very, very high. You are working a lot with data center, Rebecca. They are under the spotlight for their energy use and water use. What is their angle on water, and what can we collectively do to make data center more water efficient?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are a lot of things around physical water that can be done, water reuse strategies, the use of alternative water sources, things like that. But I think it's also a bit of a public perception problem. It's not that the industry doesn't use a lot of water, they certainly do, but I think when a new development comes to town, I think a lot of operators could do a better job of that community participation component and making sure the community is educated on what's coming and what it really means, and putting it in the context of other things that they're more familiar with, like agricultural use or car washes or golf courses. I think putting it in perspective with some of those other uses can make it more palatable. And so I think there's a big education component, but then also a sustainable development component, just making sure that, you're not trying to develop somewhere where you're overtaxing the resources and considering all the other users in the watershed. And so sometimes that will drive operators to, maybe they're not going to work with a utility. Maybe they're going to go develop their own water resources. Maybe groundwater is going to be a more sustainable source, surface water. So there's a lot of considerations there.
And if you think about it, there is a lot AI can do for water management as well.
Absolutely.
There was, I don't know if you've seen it, but McKinsey released a report on AI and water, I think back in September, where they demonstrated that the water efficiency gain you can get by using AI is actually 60 times more than the water used in all the data centers. So if you use AI to solve industry challenges, you can actually get a very interesting leverage.
Yeah,
and when it comes to efficiency, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, I think using AI to solve municipal markets losses and inefficiencies. And I think a lot of the data center operators are starting to do that with the utilities that they work with. They're like, we need your water, but there's a lot we can do to help you manage your water more efficiently. And so let's see what we can do there.
So we've painted a picture on why water management is absolutely critical in industry. I'd like now to move to the solutions that we can provide to address those different challenges. There are, a lot of technologies that are available today. We are not talking about science fiction or very far future. And those technologies can be, deployed, even if it takes some time. So don't wait to have a shutdown to start deploying the technology, but they can be deployed in months to help address that. There are a lot of different technologies that are helping, and it's really at every level. It starts with smart sensors. The more information you get, the more intelligent your system can be. So we see I was about to say on a daily basis, but that's the reality. A lot of companies coming up with sensors helping to measure new parameters that are critical to water efficiency. They are, of course, monitoring systems. So how do you collect and gather all those data? How do you contextualize the data? How do you structure the data? And then as a third layer, how do you make it into water intelligence to help optimize the different system? I'm going to turn to you, Luc, as an integrator. You do deploy a lot of digital system to industries. Do you have maybe a few examples to share on how digital architecture can help to be more water efficient?
There's a lot of them. I mean, automation has been around for decades, so we're not obviously talking about anything completely new. All we're doing is really explaining how maybe new tools in the toolbox can do a more advanced job. So, I mean, we as an integrator, we still see lots of opportunities across all industries to automate process. I mean, it's a simple a statement, I know, but there's still a lot of human interaction or human choice making being used to keep processes running and to keep them efficient. And so from everything from just traditional automation technologies and solid PID control and solid threshold alarming, right? And so putting that aside, collecting more data. I think when we were chatting a little bit about this topic, when plants of the past would be designed, I think, with the minimal level of instrumentation needed. And now we see a much bigger focus on collecting more data. You can't, we talked a lot about in the keynote this morning, data is like the fuel or the food for AI. If we don't have the information, then it can't help. So talking about how that then can be a tool on top of the traditional automation, well, we need more information. We need to be able to pick up flows, pressures, analyzers in line. So I think those tools are just becoming more and more advanced and eliminating more and more of the need for human interaction. They're still going to play a part in obviously training and teaching AI, right, and making sure that it is making the right choices and supervising it. But our vision, and kind of we've seen this with a couple customers, is getting away from them interacting with the SCADA software, right? When we go into a plant and there are operators sitting at SCADA terminals for a long period of time, it's sort of an indication to us that there's been something left on the table in terms of what automation can provide. That's something that the software should be doing for you, including AI now as a very real piece of it. And we have customers who have, who have developed one-button startups for plants. From a complete shutdown, they can hit start, and through a myriad of process conditions that don't always look the same, the plant will start itself up and run through a various, flow ranges and shut trains off and turn them on, all without a human interaction, if that's what they choose. That can obviously be worked in if they're not comfortable with that. But I think the last piece I'll just say to leave it, and I kind of touched on it in terms of this, is we've seen the most success when customers use AI as like an operator augmentation. So it takes time to make choices and look at data. It takes time to find things within lots of information. AI helps them get to that information much more quickly. It helps suggest things before they may realize they even need to go, take a look at something, or before the cycle of every 5 days, I look at this piece of equipment. It can suggest that sooner and more quickly. So it is giving time back to them to go do other things that it's not well equipped to do today. So those are, and we have customers doing that. So I guess that was to the point of your question. Do we have experiences? We have a few customers who have already gone into that territory and are seeing those things happen today.
What about you, Nick? What kind of solution have you deployed to make industries more water efficient?
So we take it from an approach that the more data and more information we can provide to the customer or to the end user operator, the more efficient we can make their process in the long run, which then empowers them to be more efficient and better at water reclamation, water reuse, getting the water through the system. So a good example, one of our platform partners in New York specializes in rainwater collection, rainwater treatment, and rainwater recycling. And for us, that's an important aspect of our business, because we don't necessarily always get to see innovation to that degree. And so every challenge is totally different. And I agree with Luke that the smarter the system is, the less the operator interaction has to be. What we're finding in the market is that ancestral or historic knowledge from operators is not being passed on to the next generation. So we're needing intelligent machinery and intelligent equipment to be able to make those decisions and choices for us.
I like, for the sake of clarity, and I'd like you to comment on what can be done on existing industries, because I realize that sometimes when we present those set of technology and we talk about digital and AI, etc., it might sound a bit futuristic, and I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that this is good for a new plant, but then I got to live with what I have, and it was not designed in AI native time. So what can I do? Could you share your perspective on what can be done on existing industries?
Sure. So I think you can approach it from a bunch of different aspects. particularly for Vesco Water, we look at it we start really with the pump. So how can we optimize and make the pump the most efficient, use the least amount of energy, and get the most reliability out of it? And when you look at wastewater systems out there in the market, the existing infrastructure is very archaic. It's very manual. It's very human interaction. So somebody has to make a decision on those things. So it's hard to get the conversation started and people to think about being able to embed intelligence into a existing system. Now there's opportunities to be able to replace all of that equipment with modern technology, but what we take an approach is finding one or two good avenues to get in, embedding some intelligence, embedding some smart water or intelligent application, whether it's the pump or the controls or whatever, energy efficiency. Start there, get the ball rolling, and as that ball starts to roll, it'll snowball into us being able to embed more of that technology and kind of modernize that system as it comes, as the demand is there, and it will not go away. So, it's segmented for us on how we approach it, but we really try to pick one avenue and then go, and then we get success in that one, we pick another avenue, part of it, and we get success in that one, and move so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a big challenge. Like it is very hard to take old things and add new on top of it. Like as a systems integrator who does this a lot, it's hard. And so each individual customer's situation is unique, but there has to be a plan for cleaning that data or making it available. You can't just, or at least it has been our experience, that it doesn't just work to take the software, and hope that it'll find everything it's meant to find. I mean, garbage in, garbage out is the cliche. It's used all the time. Anyways, our team spends a lot of time working with each customer to understand what data they want to bring into it and what level of effort that might take to make it ready for its use. I don't know.
I would just add, I think the smart digital solutions that you've talked to, Nick, definitely one side of the efficiency equation, and I think the other is really understanding the application for that water within that whatever type of industrial facility it is, and are you using the right water quality for that application, and could you tweak that water quality through side treatment or whatever. There's often a lot of, especially with older established industries, to really analyze the water balance and the water quality throughout the whole process and think about ways that you can reuse water more so that you have less demand.
Well, and to do so, actually, it was interesting. You reminded that automation is not really new, right? We've seen, if you were in the plenary, there was this very nice video where Modicon invented the first PLC in 1968, and then Wonderware as the first SCADA, and it has been there for a long time. I think the low-hanging fruit opportunity is to actually use those systems to do more than what they did so far. They were probably invented for, cost efficiency has been the main driver of automation for a long time. Then there was a era of quality optimization where all the lean thinking was coded into the automation system. Then we have to optimize the very same system for energy. Those very same systems, so any industry that is running with a SCADA can be tuned to be as well water efficient on top of being cost efficient, quality optimized, and energy efficient without huge investment in new systems, but just by tuning your system, asking it to do advanced process control to decrease the use of water. And if we think AI, identify patterns where the process was more water efficient and just replicate them for the future. So there are a lot of opportunities for industry to use the systems they have, just enhance it, but have water in mind as an important outcome of that process. We talked about technology. I'd like to move to regulation that was highlighted in our survey as a third potential driver on why would I do something about water. Rebecca, when you do the design very early on, I guess compliance is a big driver. What are the trends when it comes to water compliance?
Yeah, I'd say it's always a big balance, I think, between ensuring reliable compliance and operational efficiency. You don't want to overdo it, such as adding too much chemical. to make sure that you never, miss your targets. It's just about dialing it in and getting that balance exactly right. And then that comes from the digital tools that are kind of feeding all those decisions and the ongoing process optimization and monitoring.
Because beyond regulation, we see more and more industrial, and I'm thinking food and bev, for example, proactively disclosing their water use, taking commitment in terms of water positive and engaging into projects to look at their water footprints end to end and compensate for their water usage. Is that only fashionable, or do you see it happening for real?
Yeah, it's happening, and I think different industries have embraced it to different degrees. So the food and beverage industry was definitely out in front, and I'd say the data center industry is right behind them. They've all made really strong commitments, and they've made them publicly, and their shareholders are holding them accountable. So while it's not a regulatory requirement, and there really isn't any regulatory guidance for it, there's a lot of industry standards out there about how we do this, how we do the accounting, how do you calculate your freshwater footprint, what counts for replenishment. So it's an evolving world, I think, in terms of which standards, which industries apply. There's a few different guidelines out there, and there's not one solid way. You see a little bit of creative accounting sometimes because there's not just one way to do it. But it's definitely a huge movement, and it's spurring a lot more conservation and replenishment. So it's definitely a good thing for industrial development.
And I'd like to come back to the second driver, the data that was in the middle of my 3 data points earlier that I discarded quickly on the savings. Because when you look at the cost of water, it's not the highest cost on the bill of material of any industry. However, at least my experience is that interacting with industrials, when you drive action to save water, there are typically a lot of collateral effect of additional savings in chemical agents, in energy needed to run this water through the system that are actually valuable. But when you engage on water efficient thinking with customer, how do your customer justify the ROI of such investment?
Yeah, I would say I worked with a food and beverage company on exactly that. I wanted to look at how many actions did they take inside the fence line, and what was the ROI on those, and at what point did that ROI really start to drop off? And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, I think, in older facilities where you can get a lot of efficiency and a lot of cost savings, but then you sort of hit a point where it starts to get a lot more painful, a lot more expensive. And that's, I think, the point where a lot of these companies then start to go outside the fence line, and they're going to say, okay, we've squeezed about all we can out of it. This is going to be our footprint. Now we're going to go look outside in the watershed and see what we can invest in to offset that use.
And with the increasing water stress and this gap between water demand and water availability, I think actually resilience or the risk to have to stop your operation because you won't have enough water is rising. So maybe the business case is more about license to operate rather than more P&L kind of impact as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen. On I see the clock running and the countdown rushing. Before we take questions, so if you want to think about your question to our esteemed panelists, let's have a final round of, if you could each share in your perspective, what is the one thing you'd like the audience to remember when it comes to industrial water?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Just kidding.
It's not really unique.
Well, I learned something new today from listening to some of my peers. I didn't know they're not called wastewater treatment facilities anymore. They're called water reclamation resource facilities. So I know that sounds kind of juvenile, but for me, if I put that in perspective, I now look at water or have a better understanding as a resource, not as something I take for granted. And I think all of us in our daily activities miss the fact that water is so important to us as humans and to the world and what we do and what we consume. And everything in this room takes some form of water to make it happen. And just looking at it from that different perspective really changes, I think, can change how we approach the water crisis that we're experiencing as a group.
Yeah, good point.
I would say, well, there's a lot of similar approaches that can be applied across industries and different types of facilities. I think we also got to remember that water is such a hyper-local issue that there really is no one-size-fits-all. And I think when you're looking at a particular industrial facility, you really need to think about the entire envelope of water use. There's usually multitudes of different ways they're using water, different opportunities to reuse water, and different opportunities within that watershed, and different risks within that watershed, depending on who the other users are. So I think it just takes a very careful analysis of that entire picture to come up with the right water management strategy for that site.
That's a great point too. Yeah, that's a really good point. It changes so much. We're really fortunate, obviously, here and in many developed parts of the world to be able to turn the tap or flush the toilet, and that's the last we ever think about water. So it sort of makes us take for granted its availability. I mean, if you look at it relative to other things, it's very cheap. But if you think there are still many parts of the world that's not the reality, and I think sometimes, reminding ourselves if we're in leadership position, reminding our teams, just because it may be easier to access or use for us, doesn't mean it shouldn't rise to a level of importance for our organization. So I think that's important to just kind of take away from something like this. And then for the SI side, or from my vantage point, I think technology is too often thought about too late in the process of solving a problem. Maybe that's changing in general just around the world because technology has so many valuable aspects to it. But just speaking about automation and AI, people will design a facility or an upgrade, and where technology then inserts itself can be far later than if it's brought to the table early and advises those other disciplines that, the physical design disciplines that we're all really maybe used to. So that would be my admonishment, is just try to bring someone who represents technology, whether inside or outside your organization, to the table earlier and hear them out in terms of how technology could be a big piece of solving your industrial water treatment issues. It's pretty amazing. Again, we've heard a lot about it. You'll hear a lot more over the next day and a half and obviously beyond, but it's amazing what it can do if it's thought about early and planned around. It doesn't become that much extra in the cost of the project if it's planned for early. It's oftentimes looked at as expensive because it's an add-on, right? And it's a secondary piece, and it's seen as maybe nice to have and not need to have, but that's where a lot of the impact is driven. Yeah.
So we stop wasting water, right? It's a resource that we don't take for granted. It is a very local topic, and it is as well a topic that calls for a joint approach, and ecosystem and technology needs to be discussed early enough, which is actually quite a good bridge to telling you that, of course, water management needs to be prioritized, not only as the perception on risk, but when it comes to taking action. And for those of you who are actually running industries, I'd like to invite you to use this Innovation Summit to build your team, because we have, as part of the Alliance, we have design firm integrators, equipment manufacturer. So go to the Innovation Park, Innovation Theater, Innovation Fund, whatever we call it, take the opportunity to talk to each other and come out of it with new ideas, new projects. We have a few minutes left for questions. And we'll just wait for the mic to be thanked.
Well, what's your approach toward PFAS and PFAS-related regulations?
Oof, that's not me. From a regulation standpoint, I don't really get involved in much on that. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not the person to answer it.
I can maybe speak to it. And it does come up, of course, all the time with new developments, because it's everywhere. And just it's something that just needs to be integrated into an overall water management strategy. I mean, if you're going to be using an aquifer, say, if an industry is going to be using an aquifer, say, that contains PFAS, there's going to have to be some treatment involved so that they're not concentrating it up and sending it on somewhere else to just cause more problems. So yeah, absolutely something that's got to be considered. And now that there's some regulations, there's sort of some teeth there that didn't used to exist.
With Nick. Not a lot that we get involved in on the regulation side. Obviously in industrial water, we were talking, maybe the one thing I'll add, we were talking about in part of our conversation, the bridges that connect industrial to municipal water. We're really fortunate, again, that a lot of our municipal water groups are used to and willing to take industrial wastewater to treat it, but there usually is a pre-treatment component to that to make sure that heavy metals, PFAS, whatever you want to call it, is mitigated or limited or removed prior to that going into the municipal treatment stream. So, there's a collaboration there that has to take place, but it's one that's, I would say, here in the U.S., we get right more than we get wrong. That's been my experience. It works out pretty well.
And it is a topic at the core of a lot of new regulation coming, well, with the EPA here in the US, but in Europe as well, there are a regulation under discussion for PFAS. So that's definitely a topic where regulation is seen as one of the drivers to push everyone to actions. The other dimension that I see very strongly on PFAS, it really shows that it's not the problem of one piece of the ecosystem. To solve or to address PFAS, it takes really a full ecosystem approach, and it needs to be driven by industries, generating those PFAS, it's the right word, and the water utilities that are at the end of the chain and have to clean it. So it's going to take a full ecosystem approach to address it.
What challenges are you seeing in the design and installation of the information network with all these changes going on, all the data collection going on? What are you seeing, and what's driving the future in that space?
I'll just quickly comment. The level of packets, transactions, whatever you want to call that, is much, much higher now. And so, when you look at models like the Purdue architecture that kind of go through layers and move data between systems, and there's kind of an element of middleware to certain pieces of the puzzle, that can create challenges in terms of the amount of data that needs to move around. Obviously, cybersecurity wraps around all of it, so you can't just connect everything and say, hey, talk to this thing. So that all has to be done in a monitored, measured way. But there's a lot of newer architectures around, subscribe, publish, subscribe, or unified namespace that allow for smart connected devices to be a part of a cyber-secure network that then other things can interact with, I guess. So if all that sounds cryptic, I apologize. I'm trying to do it with the countdown thing right here in my face. But yeah, industrial networking today is very different than it was 10 years ago, and obviously exists where it didn't 30 years ago. So modern automation architectures need to be built for the next 10 years, and all of those things are elements of that.
Okay, so thank you very much. Let me encourage all of you to join one of the water management solution tour that we are organizing at the Innovation Park somewhere, yes, right behind us here. There are a lot of other panels happening in those 2 days, and for the industries representative here in the room, competitiveness, cost competitiveness was the number one priority, right? So we have a panel session on that tomorrow with another group of great panelists, and now will be the time to thank my esteemed panelists for this insightful conversation, and thank the audience for joining us.